Ukraine is at war. Regular map updates of the conflict show that Russian troops occupy a fifth of the country. Its major cities are being bombed or under siege. But despite the chaos, Ukrainian schools are still open, supermarket shelves are still stacked, and the government is still functioning. So how is Ukraine still operating? And can it last? On the 22nd of February, 2 days before the war, Volodymyr Zelensky organized a meeting with Ukraine's business leaders. He brushed aside old differences with rivals, and the government proposed a massive program of economic deregulation and tax cuts. Businesses paid one-off additional taxes, funneling hundreds of millions of euros to the military just ahead of the war. 2 days later, when the war started, videos quickly spread of Ukrainians bagging sand on beaches and of making improvised weapons. Ukraine was preparing to enter a war economy. In peacetime, most factories are geared towards making goods for consumers. Demand for military equipment rises, and factories are reconverted to increase military output. Like this brewery, which switched to making Molotov cocktails, or this luxury shoe factory that started making military boots. While so far there have been shortages in besieged cities, most of the country has access to supplies, though with less choice.
Машины ездят, перевозчики работают, где нету военных действий, в принципе, и медикаменты, и продукты питания доставляются вовремя.
But as Ukrainian refugees leave the country, infrastructure gets destroyed, and land is lost, Ukraine's economy will take a toll. In response, Ukraine has banned men between the ages of 18 to 60 from leaving the country, not only for soldiers, but so that they keep working. And the government is providing cheap loans to businesses to help them survive the crisis and support the war effort. The country's economy is also very dependent on selling commodities, like agricultural products, minerals, and fossil fuels. If we take a look at a map of Ukraine, we can see that a significant chunk of that production can be found in the east and the south of the country, which have borne the brunt of the Russian offensive. And some of that production has been expressly targeted by Russian attacks. This is damaging Ukraine's ability to produce things on its own and reducing its main source of income.
Ukraine was a heavily commodity-dependent economy, a very unbalanced economy, very much dependent on imports of a lot of stuff, and just not able to produce everything it needs itself. So a wartime economy in Ukraine there will likely be a very heavy emphasis on how can we get the foreign currency that we're going to need to buy stuff that we're going to need to fight this war.
The Ukrainian central bank estimates that since the start of the conflict, the economy has shrunk by half. It means that as time goes on, Ukraine's ability to buy or make the goods and weapons it needs will shrink. And that's a problem, since despite Ukraine having a significant defense industry of its own, and destroy more Russian equipment, it is still massively outgunned. At the start of the war, Russian tanks outnumbered Ukrainian tanks 6 to 1, and for fighter planes, that number was 10 to 1. To make up for that difference, it needs one thing: money. While Ukraine's diaspora has donated funds and the economy has become a priority for the war, by far the most important source has been international aid. And that has been the goal of Zelensky's appeals in the media.
EU leaders just moments ago announced they will spend more on military equipment to Ukraine.
My administration authorized another $200 million to keep a steady flow of weapons and ammunition moving to Ukraine.
Since the start of the war, billions in loans and aid have been granted to the country. The US alone announced a $13 billion aid package, compared to a Ukrainian budget of $60 billion in 2021 and a military budget of $8 billion. While Ukraine's allies have donated unknown amounts of weapons, including vital equipment like anti-tank and anti-air missiles, not all the equipment is free. It still needs cash to buy other high-tech weaponry, like the much-advertised Bayraktar drones. But most of that aid arrives by land, here, in the west of the country, and it's concentrated in the city of Lviv, which has turned into a major hub for refugees and supplies. While the area was mostly spared at the start of the war, it's seeing increased bombings and attacks, posing danger to Ukraine's war effort.
Russia is widening its attack on cities. Airstrikes hit targets in central and western Ukraine.
It's making it harder to bring military gear to Ukraine's front lines, to supply cities, and bring goods and equipment to keep the economy going.
Недостаточно бензина и недостаточно средств чтобы привести посадочные материалы и обработать землю правильно, нести удобрения.
Further to the south, Ukraine's Black Sea ports are being blockaded.
Касается международного перевезення. Много, значить, перевозчиков застряли в Грузии, застряли в Турции.
This blockade and damage to infrastructure in the west of the country will limit Ukraine's ability to export the raw materials its economy is so dependent on.
How long can Ukraine's economy keep this going?
Yeah.
I think that's totally dependent on foreign financing. The West is backing Ukraine in this fight. I think it totally depends on how much money, basically, and how much equipment, so that Ukraine doesn't have to buy stuff themselves.
And the war is already having a global impact, with fears of grain shortages in Africa and commodities shortages in Europe. And once the war is over, it will have to rebuild the more than 100 billion euros in damages so far.
I think Afghanistan is a very interesting comparison, because the Afghanistan economy is now collapsing at the moment, now that Western support, monetary support has sort of ended, also in the form of aid. But before that, you could see how an Afghanistan economy fundamentally was extremely weak, but could basically run on aid and foreign government money for a very long time.